Welcome, beautiful souls, to Healing Mindset, the space where awareness meets transformation. If you have ever wondered why too high, stress seems to hit women differently, affecting mood, energy, even weight, today's episode will bring the clarity you have been searching. Joining us in is Sharon Neilson, a seasoned RN with over 30 years in women's wellness and holistic coach who bridges medical science with a feminine wisdom. Together, we will often uncover often unlooked links between stress, insulin resistance, and what Sharon calls feminine recovery. Return to balance, vitality, and body's natural glow. And I am your host, Nazish. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sharon.
Thank you, Nazish, for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah. So, Sharon, to begin, how does stress specifically impact women's body differently when it comes to insulin resistance?
Yeah. Okay. So women, I think actually it's very interesting that this conversation is reoccurring quite a bit. And I think that women themselves are particularly interested in this because they're feeling it energetically within their bodies. It's kind of now really, it's never been part of the medical domain. It was never part of medical school. It was never part of what doctors were perceived or taught as part of kind of their normal repertoire of managing women. And I think that it's kind of come to a head because we've got kind of a global issue of multiple things. So the first thing really is that women are taking on lots and lots of responsibilities as part of their life. So, you know, the good thing for women is that they're working, that they're interactive with their life, they're taking on more responsibility than maybe previous generations have done. And that doesn't mean that it's not the same effect in their heart, but I think that physically, I think women are doing more. So I think that we're kind of, well, actually even mentally probably doing more rather than the physical. So we're still having the children, having the families, but still wanting to go to work. We're working in very successful leadership jobs, you know, and or even just, you know, the fact that you've got to go to work at a certain time and then you're kind of trying to coordinate the children. And then what we now have is like, I guess, a food industry that kind of now talks to us as if to say, have this, you know, it's all marketing about the high protein, you know, low fat has been around for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And it gets marketed very much in regard to how people see that. And I think that one of the things personally from my own experience was that particularly when you read these ingredients or you look at the context of this food, a lot, if they take out flavor, which is often where the fat is, they will put sugar into it. And that actually starts to substitute like the flavor. So we, you know, traditionally have almost been fooled into thinking, oh, well, if I'm eating low fat, then that's better for me. But in fact, it's a lot of hidden sugar that sits within that. Now, if you consider that most of us now don't have farms, we don't are self-contained, we all go to buy food and eat, you know, kind of food that is sort of packaged rather than something that we've made ourselves, then there's a lot of sugar and things like that that's put into it. And I think that that along with our nervous system is actually then predisposing us to like an insulin resistance. The other thing that's kind of happening is if you think about our body and the cell itself has you know, a number of receptors on its cell membrane, which kind of is part of the communication keys, I suppose, like the door into the cell to do a lot of different jobs. And one of them is to do with our insulin. So our insulin is produced by the pancreas. It's a naturally, you know, occurring hormone. And it is expected to help us move the sugar that we consume or in our bloodstream into the cell. But part of the problem is that when we've had too much volume of sugar sitting within our bloodstream, the cells are already full, like the receptors are already full of these keys, which means anything that's kind of left over is then just circulating around our body. So that's part of it as to why I now start to talk a lot about the risk of like pre-diabetes. So the insulin resistance is occurring because, in fact, all of our receptors are already full.
Yeah.
So therefore, any extra sugar that we're then taking, there's more insulin being produced by the, by the pancreas. But what it will do is it will just then take that sugar and it stores as fat. So it no longer becomes a useful molecule, that sugar, as part of our energy supply. And so what happens is that people start to like put on more and more weight kind of thing. And I do certainly understand, you know, if you spoke to a medical practitioner, they would just say, and as this story gets said, you just have to stop eating your sugar.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, you know, like you kind of go, okay, well, if you remove the cause of what's going on, then, you know, which is kind of why my comment then was made about really, if you go to the supermarket, and actually buy food that you think has been labelled and everything to support you, if you actually aren't looking at the content, you would be quite surprised at how much sugar is in there. So you're almost unconsciously consuming sugar that you shouldn't be. And so it becomes that catch-22, you know, between our system is already kind of full of sugar, and that, you know, it can take a while because there's a lot of habits that I think we all create, and that sweet flavor is something that we all kind of go through as part of our management with our stress as well. Does that kind of make sense?
It does makes a lot of sense, and it is actually eye-opening that how it is incredible how daily tension and the daily food intake that we are doing, that how it can just quietly rewrite our own
Yes.
metabolic health.
Yes.
Amazing. So, just amazing. So, for our listeners, just tell us what are the subtle signs women might miss before things escalate, like those little red flags that we often just brush off.
Yes, that we put down to life, I think, are those symptoms. So, you know, when we say, oh man, I'm so fatigued, or I'm, you know, that exhaustion that just doesn't seem to go away,
Yeah.
is quite a big one. I think if you're putting on weight
Yeah.
as well, I think that's one of those things that we certainly now see in the hospital, the extremity of weight in different age groups. And I've never seen that before. And I mean, it is very complex weight gain. And I think that if you're heading into, like, if you're kind of that 40 and over, and even in their late 30s, girls will start to experience perimenopausal type changes where your estrogen starts to drop and your progesterone is starting to drop. And that then changes your metabolism again. And that makes you more resistant with the sugar because it actually is changing the cell membrane's reactivity to insulin. So therefore your cell is not as open to receiving the insulin because you're going through perimenopause. And it's like no one's fault. Like, this is kind of one of those things where it's kind of like perimenopause has happened for years. So I think if your listeners are kind of hitting into that age group, I would automatically start to say you're at risk of perimenopause, of insulin resistance. I would also say the weight gain, the fatigue. I think also that underlying level of anxiety that sometimes you can't sort of shift. So it could be that there is this vibration within your system where you're really not settling and you're not sleeping properly. And, you know, you're kind of finding that you're kind of, you know, buzzing around up here rather than kind of getting to the end of the day, going for a walk and settling your nervous system, and then having a really good sleep. So I think they're really, really easy signs. And I think they're very common in people who are like working full-time jobs. You're running a team. You're trying to go to the gym as well. You could be even a new mum, for instance, you know, because women are having babies a bit later in life. And so I think that even as a new mum, all those symptoms will be dealing with the fact that you're kind of like, oh, yeah, this is just what my life is. And so therefore you're trying to grab all of this kind of what you're perceiving as eating healthy food. But in fact, all that's doing is adding another layer of kind of sugar into your system.
This is such an eye-opening conversation with you. I am so sure that many of our listeners are going to benefit so much from this.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad. It's become a bit, from my own experience, I've kind of, even as, you know, like as a nurse, and I still work in the hospitals and all of that kind of thing, I think it's just become one of those messages that I feel is not strongly talked about on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's not, and it's no one's fault. And that's the other thing, you know, like I think sometimes with social media and things, they sort of go, are you doing this all day and you're doing this all day, but you haven't done this, you know? And I kind of think our hormones, our bodies change through different hormone changes through our life. And that has been since, you know, Eve, basically.
Yeah.
You know, with Adam and Eve. And I kind of think the only thing that's now changing is how we live our life. You know, it's the industrialization. It's the way our food is produced. It's the fact that we aren't going and getting, you know, food that comes out of soil that's rich in nutrients anymore, you know. And so therefore, even the way it's stored and the way it's transported and all of that sort of thing is kind of almost taken out of our hands. And I suppose that I kind of my own journey, I guess, was that I'd been married and I'd had children and I was working full time and going to the gym and all that sort of stuff. And yet I felt like I was just imploding. And I think that that was something that I just went, I'm a smart, intelligent person. Surely I can work this out, you know. And then I kind of, part of my coaching has come around the fact that there is so much conflicting information.
Okay.
And often it's written in a medical framework, which depends on the audience as to whether they, A, would have access to that, or B, have the ability all the time to read through all the paraphernalia to get to the point, if that makes. So I kind of just decided that with my coaching that that's part of, you know, my community is the fact that I think we all have to work on this daily, and that if you do it as a community and we become more conscious as an entity ourselves, then we begin to support that shift, to support one another, if that kind of, because I have become very almost emotionally attached to this because I feel like I kind of myself was like, I'm still going to the gym. Why do I still feel like this? Why is my body not changing? And, you know, you can go to a PT who's generally a boy and they'll say, you just need to have to lift more weights and you just have to stop eating food.
Yeah, you know. I know.
Kind of like, yeah, I'm doing that and I'm starving and then I'm cranky. And yes, we have to lift weights, but we have to eat properly and we can't fast. That's the other thing, is that I think when women get into perimenopause and become more stressed, the fasting phenomenon that gets talked about a lot, which can support some of this insulin production, can be very, I think it's a bit tricky. It's not black and white the way it's spoken about in the media. And I think that for women, I think there's a genuine opportunity to fast, but I think the fasting is done more like at the end of the day rather than at the beginning of the day.
I can understand.
Yeah. So it's kind of like one of those things where I just think it's so it's so complicated and it's so multifactorial. And I think that for your listeners, it's kind of like, have a look at your environment and have a look at what your life is doing. And then that sugar, I think, removal is not just okay, I'm never going to eat a chocolate again, or I'm never going to have a glass of wine again, because I think that's also very extreme and that creates different cascades. Whereas I think you're kind of better off to say, how do I do this, like you said, day to day, and how do I make my lifelong, healthier for me, for my body and my 90-year-old self.
Yeah. That is wonderful, trust me. So like you often talk about eternal glow. I love that phrase personally. But like, is this glow purely physical, or does it also reflect your emotional and mental well-being?
Oh, I feel, I think if we see someone who's radiating,
Yeah.
often, yes, you'll see that physical glow,
Yeah.
but I think it comes from their heart. Like, I think that glow comes from that sense of self where you've kind of worked it out, whatever the problem was, in your life, and you're kind of feeling like, okay, this is how my life is running. And I know that everyone says this, but I'm happy with this.
Yeah.
And I feel confident. I feel at peace with what I'm doing. And I know that I'm unstoppable. It's kind of developing that confidence in that, what I have to say or what I have to do or the way I want to be actually brings value to the world. And I think a lot of women struggle with that. Like, I don't think a lot of, we've kind of, gone into this, and I certainly was one of them, where you're kind of feeling like, okay, you get married and you have children, and that one day you'll pop out and go, ta-da, I've done it, kind of thing. And I don't think that really happens. I think we get so consumed and overwhelmed with looking after everyone else that our little person gets lost. Yeah. And so that's where I was kind of like, that's why I called my business Eternal Her, because I feel that she is the one that makes you, if that makes sense. But she gets hidden, or she gets put in the back seat because she does, you don't have time to deal with her needs, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So I think the glow is really something that I think is a personal, what does that look like? And I'm kind of like, I think when you look at people and the way they carry themselves, the energy that they're putting into the way they look and feel and interact with people. But I also think in that confidence of how they create boundaries within their life. So, you might be working in an environment that just really isn't suiting like your life, for instance, and yet you're kind of at the point of feeling like you should be there rather than you would be there. And that's one of those boundaries. And so part of the program process is really trying to work out, where does someone sit? What are they doing in their life? And then how can I help them? Like, is there something I can do? Because health is so holistic. Like, to me, it's not just about your physical. I think our emotional is becoming increasingly needing to be supported. And I think that our spiritual can get lost in the mix as well, because what you're truly feeling as a being, and it's not even relating to religion per se. This is about, taking the reins off you, and who would you be as your goddess if you were allowed to like blossom completely into whatever you wanted, or whoever your inner feeling is meant to be.
Trust me, talking to you makes me feel like radiance is not just a lab result. Like, it comes from your emotional, physical, mental, and all the well-being. It's so fascinating.
Yeah. And it takes time.
It takes time. It takes time, and it takes a lot of resilience to go through it, and a lot of awareness, which I'm definitely sure our listeners are going to get after listening to this podcast with you.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us, like, for all those who are listening, like women who are like in high stress seasons, high
Yeah.
stress environment. How do you coach those women to maintain that glow even when life feels heavy?
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. If I actually knew, and it doesn't come out of a bottle, unfortunately.
It does not.
You know, we keep spending
All
so
these
much.
magic ads, magic
I know.
potions, it does not. I
You
know.
can spend a gazillion dollars on moisturizers, and that doesn't make any
Does
difference.
not make you happy. Yeah.
If you're not sleeping, I think the secret is really, well, the secret is how you're sleeping
Yeah.
and how you're, I think we all thrive in a challenging environment, whatever that may look like, right? Because
Yes.
that's in our true environment where we are meant to be, brings us into our actual eternal selves kind of come to the forefront, because that's what we're meant to be for. But I think it's then us learning how to turn that switch off when we
Yeah.
need to, and then to actually allow more regulation of your nervous system. And that's where I now talk about what's your sleep like, what is your routine, like your sleep routine coming when you come home from work, or what are you doing after you've picked the kids up and you're like making dinner, and how is that evening kind of panning out for you? Or, like if you work overnight, for instance,
Yeah.
then your system naturally is going to be deregulated. And so your sleeping is going to be upside down. So it's
Yeah.
then how you actively start to message your nervous system to say, you know what, I'm okay. And whatever those little routines, so going for a walk, making sure you're well hydrated, making sure you've had something to eat that actually sustains your body. So when I say, having been a shift worker for like a good 20 years of my nursing, I kind of got to a point where I went, I can't do nights anymore. Like, because we would do 7 days of nights.
Yeah.
And then we would like flick back over into a day shift for a week, and then we would flick back into nights for 3 weeks, and then flick back in. And I was kind of like, like it, to me, on one way you could say you get more hours in your day because you're working overnight and everyone else is asleep, so you can get ahead.
Yeah.
But then also your body is like then starting to say, well, how do I, when you're naturally wanting to be asleep at 3 o'clock in the morning, because that's when all your body naturally comes down, that you kind of think, well, how do I accelerate that opportunity so my body will settle quickly? And I think it's working out those little things for yourself as an individual. And that's what I work with clients, is sometimes we just need to sit down and try and map out a day or a week, and then kind of say, okay, where are these triggers where we can start to put little things into your day that create the boundaries? Like, it might be as simple as saying, you know what, I'm going to light a candle at the end of the day because my day has been so busy, and that you just keep your light. So you might have put the kids to bed, or everyone's got to bed, or whatever they're doing. So it's just your space that you might then say, I'm just going to light a candle in a soft light and just read for a little while. And that starts to, as that routine starts to happen, your nervous system starts to pick up to kind of go, okay, I'm all right. I'm allowed to just like relax now because I've got no tiger running after me right now. And I think it's like learning whatever those little triggers are for you that makes a difference. So that's it. It's a very it's not a fast, easy, just take this tablet. I mean, magnesium does help. That's the other thing. If people got magnesium, that does work. I think if you take that at night, that is the best you can do to help your nervous system. And then that kind of settles your system and allows you to sleep, so that then you can kind of at least wake up rejuvenated the next day to start again.
Yeah. Trust me, this balance between your self-care and your day, it is so important, and it is empowering when it truly begins.
Yes.
You will see the change in yourself and in a lot of things you're going to do, especially your energy and your healing.
Yes, yes, yes. And the boundaries, where, as women, we give in a lot. So,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where even to be able to say, no to everyone, even in the family, or no to something that that you've committed to, but you just don't have it in you, is the ability to be able to say, you know what, I just can't. I need to have some time to myself because of whatever's, and that's when that true self-care is. Like,
Yeah.
yes, we all like to go to the spa and we like to have a massage and do all that sort of thing, and I think that's important, but I think that true internal feeling of not being obliged and wanting to be at peace with the decisions
Yes.
we're making is the ultimate in self-care.
I believe that completely. So, Shan, before we actually wrap this up, I just want to ask, like, how can our listeners connect with you, learn more about your work, or explore your wellness program, something like that?
Yeah. Well, I have social media.
Yeah.
So my social media site is Eternal Her.
Okay.
So on both Instagram and Facebook, they can. Um, my website is also, www.eternalher.com, and that is kind of where they can see different programs. I'm about to launch an 8-week program called Awaken Her, which is kind of the beginning of this. And the way I'm going to offer it is actually a fortnightly coaching. So rather than weekly coaching, because I know that a lot of programs run like that. And I think when you're new to interacting with a person, sometimes you need a bit of space between your interactions to kind of go, okay, they've told me all this information, but now what do I do about that?
Yeah.
And I'm one of those people who I need to marinate in my information. So I
Yeah.
kind of have thought, and I've thought really hard about how I like to be coached. And I kind of, I'm just launching this. I'm only going to take 5 women at the moment. So it's limited to spacing, but it's called Awaken Her. If they want to have a look at it, or they want to just message me to potentially just get some more information, I'm happy for them to DM me over social media. I have a blog. So if people don't they're like, I don't know who you are. You're some random chick that's just turned up in my world. On my website, there's a whole bunch of they can take their own self-guided assessment of their pre-diabetes risk. So
Yeah.
they could do that themselves and download that, read a blog. There's heaps of stuff.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that most of our listeners are gonna come and look into your program and more about your work and everything. It was a lovely conversation with you. So, Sharon's insight remind us that women's wellness is more than diet or exercise. It is the harmonious dance of mind, body, and spirit. Take her wisdom to heart. Nurture yourself. Honor your stress signals and start reclaiming that eternal glow today. You have been listening to Healing Mindset, and I am your host, Nazish. Until next time, breathe, balance, and remember your body always knows the way home. Thank you so much.